Hello, good evening, welcome back to another instalment of the Tunnel Podcast. What can I say? Everyone's massive clock behind me and no one get the time right tonight. So we are late slightly, but without further ado, it'll be worth waiting for. I can promise you that. Joined, of course, by the two house men, the two international superstars. We've got Connor Chalmers and Tom Goffe. Connor, how are we doing tonight?
Aye, all right, aye. A bit miffed about the national break that we've had there. Not pleased with the manager's outlook on things, but we'll touch on that. But to be fair, after tomorrow night, we'll get back to the proper football, as I call it, and I'm sure, that'll take my blood pressure down as well.
Listen, the next 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever we end up on, Connor, you can use it as a therapy session, and Tom can be your psychologist, and you can lie down and reel at a couch, all right? Tom, how are you doing, mate? You're a bit chipper tonight, actually. You weren't this chipper the other night, but you seem really chipper tonight. It's good to have you back on.
No, yeah, I'm good, thanks, mate. Well, obviously, I'm the one. Apologies for the delay in starting. It was my fault.
It's your Portuguese wife's fault, isn't it? That's what it is.
It was, yeah, but she's not. I haven't got much chance of her admitting it, have I, mate? You never have. So I'm here now. That's all that matters, mate. And yeah, looking forward to chatting. Chatting England, chatting Scotland. Been watching all the games, so looking forward to getting stuck into it.
Listen, as well, I think it's be remiss if we didn't mention it. We have, over the last couple of evenings, done a couple of watch-alongs on X. If anyone's seen them, let us know what you think and what they call space. I'm down with the kids saying space. But last night got really busy, Connor, didn't it? During that Scotland game, there was quite a few opinions flying around, which I'm sure I'll refer back to during this. But Connor, let's delve into it. Steve Clarke, Tom sent us an article this morning which sparked plenty of debate. We'll call it peculiar choice of phrases during what has now been labelled Scotland's worst run of results in competitive football. 8 losses without reply. It's now 1 win in 14. Sum that up for us as best you can with being as articulate as you can.
Well, I mean, it is just absolutely not good enough. Is the obvious thing to say. I mean, yes, you can, in isolation, you can look at each individual game and you can say, well, the level of opponent we've played throughout that run in the last 14 games. Obviously, we've had England come to Hampden, where we didn't really lay a glove on them, get absolutely steamrolled. France, obviously, in there in friendlies. The Netherlands, again, these are top-tier sides. There's no getting away from that. But the levels of performance and the mistakes we've made aren't good enough either. Over the course of that 14-game run we've been on, I think it's now something like 33 or 34 goals we've shipped. That's that tells you where the problem lies. We're not scoring enough goals and we're not keeping them out at the back. There's plenty of games we've had in that period that we should have done better in. We should be beating Poland at Hampden. That is one of the poorest performances I've seen a side come to Hampden and put in and still walk away with 3 goals and 3 points. Poland were shocking. They were really they didn't actually have to work for any of their goals. We handed them to them. And then you look at the Portugal game last night. Again, yes, is it a tough trip to make to go to Lisbon? Of course it is. And nobody's saying that Steve Clarke was expected to go there and get a win. But in that game, we put ourselves in a good position. We got that early lead, which stunned them because they wouldn't have expected to go behind early. Stuns their home crowd. It does exactly what you want an early goal to do in these tough away games. And we didn't capitalise. We had some good moments of play. Undoubtedly, we had a couple of half chances here and there after that. Didn't take any of them yet again, which is just what we do. At the other end, that our goal lived an awfully charmed life until they finally got the breakthrough, you have to say, and even after that. But again, it's avoidable mistakes for me that's costing us these goals. You look at the opener for Bruno Fernandes, yet again, it's another example of an opposition player getting time and space at the edge of our box to get a free shot away. And it wasn't even the first time in that game it had happened. Rafael Leao had a number of attempts from outside the box that, Angus Gunn made a couple of good saves. He dragged one or two wide. And it's like we're constantly not learning for these issues. You can't. I mean, it's noticeable to me when someone's running towards our area or they're picking it up 30, 40 yards for their goals. Our defenders, our players are backing off of them. Nobody's getting out and putting pressure on the ball. They're backing off, which is allowing the space to get an effort away. And then you've got to question Angus Gunn as well, because he has to keep that out. It's not into the corner. And it's another one of those goals. I think it's the third one now over the last handful of matches we've played since the Euros that he's, been weak-wristed with, and he's failed to keep out and ended up palming into his own net. And you can't keep on with that either. There has to be something done in training, I think, with Angus Gunn to work on that and work out why he's getting beat at that side constantly when he's getting a hand to it. So it's all of those things. And then when you hear the manager say, don't really worry about results just now, it's all about, understanding where we are, and we're trying to evolve for what we did during the Euros, which I get. We have changed to a 4-2-3-1 formation, which is different. But that being said, results always matter. It's a results business. So for the manager to be saying he doesn't care about results right now is deeply worrying for me when we're looking like we're going to go through a Nations League campaign without a win and then go into a World Cup qualifying campaign off the back of, by that point, a record that will be about, in its own right, 13 games or so without a win.
Tom, I'll come to you because you're no stranger to Steve Clarke as a manager. He obviously managed your beloved West Brom to actually a really respectable finish in the Premier League. Your highest ever Premier League finish. I don't know if you'll correct me if I'm wrong there, but as a Scotland fan, I'll park his comments to one side. For me, it's more the conservative nature that almost playing with a handbrake on. You look last night, we're winning the game 1-0. There's no real impetus to go and put the foot down and capitalise. Even at one apiece, when we have started playing our way back into the game and you're playing with a bit of tempo and you're looking to get yourself forward, he's holding off on the changes. He's holding off the changes. I think we watched 5 Portuguese changes, Connor. You correct me if I'm wrong, but before Clarke makes one. Is it something that he's always been? He's always been very pragmatic in his style.
No, not really. When he was at West Brom, he was quite the opposite, to be honest with you. He was a bit of fresh. Get my words out. Breath of fresh air when he came in, because it was Roy Hodgson before him, and then he obviously got pinched by England, and he was quite a conservative coach. He kind of built from the back. Solid defense, solid foundation, and very much in a mindset. Well, if you don't concede, you've got at least a point. And when Clarke come in, he was quite attack minded. I think with Clarke at West Brom, I don't want to sound too harsh, but he was very fortunate in that we brought in Romelu Lukaku in on loan, his first season in charge. And, he was an absolute revelation for us in that season in the Premier League. He scored I think it was about 16, 17 goals. And we also had the likes of Peter Odemwingie and Shane Long, who were kind of in their prime at the time as well. And, we just had a bit of a plethora of attacking talent, which obviously helped. But, Clarke was quite forward thinking. It was enjoyable to watch, and you wouldn't have really kind of put the words, pragmatic, in the mix when he was at West Brom. But but Scott, I think you make a good point. Again, from obviously a neutral looking in, I think you make a good point about the reluctancy to make substitutions. That's one thing I've noticed, and it's one thing I've kind of said to you guys the last 2 matches, with his starting 11, that he very much seems to have some favourites in there that, obviously the likes of McTominay and McGinn, they justify, playing every every week. But there's certainly some players in there who, I don't think I've ever seen them really perform, well for Scotland. And like, obviously I've been watching the games in the Euros and the friendlies in the build up to it, and these games now, I just keep thinking, why are these guys getting picked? They're not McTominays, they're not McGinns. I'm talking about your McLeans and your Hanleys. They're the two guys I've been picking out a little bit. And just, why is he not giving others an opportunity, especially in this Nations League as well? I know there's a carrot there at the end of it, but looking at the group that you guys have got, it was going to be very difficult for you to win this group, wasn't it? So I don't understand why he's not using it as more of an opportunity to experiment. I'm not saying go, complete overhaul, throw 11 new guys in there and see how they get on. But, there's guys I very much feel who didn't perform well at the Euros whatsoever, who still seem to be playing now. And then, like you said, they're starting, and then they're not even getting, dragged off with half an hour to go and giving someone else an opportunity. He seems to be making changes very late in the game. And again, look from the outside in, it's just a little bit baffling, to be honest with you.
Listen, we'll come back onto those changes, but Connor, I do want to run through these results. Okay, so 3-1 defeat to England, 2-0 defeat to Spain, 4-1 against France, draw with Georgia, the draw with Norway, 4-0 gubbing in Holland, the 1-0 defeat at home to Northern Ireland. Then there's that win it against Gibraltar, the draw with Finland, Germany defeat, draw with Switzerland, lose against Hungary, defeat against Poland, and defeat against Portugal. Now, so, some would say you've got to add context to this, so I will try. 6 friendlies, 2 dead rubber qualifiers, 3 tournament games. The only one really then that would have you scratching your head is obviously that defeat to Northern Ireland. Is that fair, or is it a case of, no, a loss is a loss? The manner of some of these losses as well has got to be put into consideration, and then the fact that we're not seeing the manager learning these lessons, for want of a better phrase.
Well, it's exactly that. It's about learning your lessons. I mean, look, this run we're on is the worst run we've ever been on, and that's for a reason. It's not like these other managers didn't have runs where they were playing tough teams constantly, where they had hard games that they had to try and find ways to win. There's always been a bit of a hallmark for Scotland that on big occasions, particularly when big teams come to Hampden, we stand up and we're counted. Even if we fall slightly short in the end of winning those games, we usually put on admirable performances. You look at Gordon Strachan against England at Hampden in 2016 qualification, 1-0 down, 2 Lee Griffiths free kicks later, and it's we're leading the game, and but for just a lapse in judgment in the last few seconds, we win that game. But still, a 2-2 draw was a laudable result given the performance we'd put in. Even historically before that, you had obviously the game against France at Hampden, which was unbelievable. Even the game against Italy that we basically were conned out of by a corrupt official. That was another game where the performance from the team was one where they left everything out on the park, and you could see that at the end of the game and go, well, look, they've give everything they've got, they've just fell up short. I can't say that with some of these results. And when you highlight some of those games there, for me, this has been part of the problem, and this is about the mentality side of things. Under Steve Clarke, we don't win friendly games. We don't win the so-called dead rubber games. We never have under Steve Clarke, because as soon as we get over the qualifying mark, it's like we just go, that's it, job done, we don't need anything else. And see, the problem with that is you then go into these tournaments off the back of a poor run of form, and your momentum's gone, and that feel-good factor you've had around the camp for qualifying has slightly fizzled because you've not picked up positive results going into it. And that's costing us dearly when we go into these tournaments. And some of these games are, the Northern Ireland one, I'm afraid, is just absolutely not acceptable in the slightest. With all due respect to Northern Ireland, particularly at that time as well, they very much were just picking themselves back up off the canvas. They had to bring back in Michael O'Neill after a couple of failed attempts with other managers. They had fallen for where they'd got to under Michael O'Neill in 2016, they took a sharp downturn, an aging side having to bring new young players in, and we couldn't beat that. You know, we can see one goal, and then ironically for Steve Clarke, Northern Ireland Steve Clarked him because they just parked the bus, or they clarked the bus. There you go. And you know, we couldn't get through it. We couldn't break it down. We lose the game 1-0. For me, it's getting to a stage where, yes, he's got us to these tournaments, and we thank him for that. You know, you have to give him that credit. But I just wonder if it's time to change it. He's had 5 years as the national team manager now. He's had a good run for most of that time. But sometimes you need to hit the refresh button. Particularly, when we look at England, I think England are a great example of this. And yes, I know there's different levels of expectation there. But other than Gareth Southgate, who was the golden child of the English FA, most managers there don't get more than 2 tournaments to try and make their mark before you move on and you freshen it up and you look to the next one. Now, we were never going to do that because it was the first 2 we'd been in for a while, but sometimes you've got to go, right, well, he's had 2 cracks at this whip. The outcome's been the same both occasions, virtually identical. Lose the first game, draw the second game, lose the third game. That's exactly the pattern he's followed in the 2 tournaments. We've been one of the worst teams in those tournaments as well. So sometimes you've got to go, thanks, Steve, you've took us as far as you can. Let's bring in somebody else who knows it. And I think somebody like a David Moyes isn't a bad call, simply because whilst his style of football, you could draw parallels between him and Steve Clarke to a degree. What Moyes has got that Clarke doesn't have is he's got that exposure at the highest levels of football management. The guy's won a European trophy. What he'd done with West Ham was quite remarkable. And I'm not saying it would be him, but I just think, why not look at and explore your options?
Well, so I'll come back to you on a final question on Scotland in a moment. But Tom, you mentioned there about experimenting. Now, to be fair to Steve Clarke, he has changed his system. He's gone to a back 4. Now, whether that's through sort of personnel being available to him or just wanting to try, you know, something different, I do feel Scotland have benefited. We seem to be breaking better. We seem to be creating more chances. However, there's going to come a point where Kieran Tierney is going to become available once more. And he's then got that decision to make, whether does he try and shoehorn in his best players, because it's that old adage, you've got to get your best players on the park at all times, or does he just keep to the system and stick to that balance and try to see if, in fairness, the back line can learn the positions and grow along this Nation League tournament?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think, look, I've watched the 2 games. Well, I watched most of the game against Portugal. I missed just at the end, but I was catching up on the highlights later. I think there was definitely positives to take from your 2 matches, especially in moving forward. I think the game against Poland it must have been so frustrating for the both of you, because going forward, you were playing some really nice football. You know, you were controlling possession. You dominated the game. You know, you created some good chances. And you were just obviously sucker punched by, you know, 2 bad tackles, you know, 2 poor decisions by the defenders to give those penalties away. You know, and it was even a misplaced pass, wasn't it, in midfield? McLean, I think it was, lost the ball. But then the guys obviously pinged one in. It was a great finish from him, wasn't it? And it's difficult, isn't it? Because, yeah, you know, you've obviously ended up losing that game. But I do think there was some, you know, positives to take, you know, especially going forward. You know, it was enjoyable to watch. Like, as a neutral, it was enjoyable to watch. And I think that first 45 against Portugal as well, you know, was impressive. I know the longer the half went on, Portugal were dominating and controlling the game more and starting to create some chances. But I thought you started incredibly well, and you know, you were hurting Portugal on the break. And causing them some problems. I know second half, yeah, Portugal completely dominated. You know, there was a lot of chances created. Gunn, you know, has made endless saves, hasn't he, in that second half? But there's some positives there, isn't there? You know, it's hard one to try and weigh up between the like you're discussing this horrible run of defeats and some of the teams you've lost to, but in these two matches. There's been some positives. Does that just trying? It's tough. I don't know. It's you two are the Scotland fans. I personally, I think Clark. How many games have you got left in the Nations League? How many games are left?
Four left.
So you got 4 games left, and then so when does the Euros, the World Cup qualifiers come into the mix?
They'll probably start in earnest next season, I'd imagine.
So the Nations League.
So the draw for that will get made at the tail end of November, I believe, and then the first games of that usually tend to take place in March because there's always a March international break. So that's when that should kick off.
Yeah, because I think the thing is, you've obviously stepped up into the top league in the Nations group, haven't you? So you're playing, top tier teams, and I just think, I don't know. I think it might be a bit rash to maybe get rid of him until. I don't know. It's a tough one, mate.
It feeds in nicely to the question I was going to put to Connor, just to sort of draw a line in the sand on Scotland tonight. So, is Steve Clarke? Have you got the confidence in him to lead the charge in this World Cup draw, regardless of what happens now in the Nations League, regardless of what happens here? Because let's not forget, you made a pertinent point last night about his charge from getting us from pot 3 to pot 2 to pot 1 in this Nation League, to getting us to those 2 tournaments. Yeah. But by the sound of what you've just said previously, you think enough's enough?
Well, I think he's fast approaching that. I mean, here's the thing, right? Tom says about, top teams, and I get that to a degree, but actually, let's look at this group we're in comparison with the other teams that are in League A that you can end up getting. We've actually had a not bad group. Take Portugal out of the equation. Portugal are an elite side. There's no denying that. They've won the Euros in recent years. They've won this Nations League itself. But you can't tell me that Poland are a side we shouldn't be able to do something against. I mean, take Lewandowski out of it. Poland, him and Zukowski, who had a real good game against us, that's sort of it for Poland. You should be able to at least be competitive and try and get results there, and certainly not be falling 2-0 behind in a game that there's just no way that should be happening in. And in Croatia, again, decent side, but they're an ageing side, Croatia. You've got 39-year-old Luka Modric still playing for them. You've got guys in there like Barisic, for example, who used to play for us, who's clearly not got the legs anymore, which is why he's left Rangers. And I look at those two and I think we should be able to compete with them right now, looking at our squad, looking at their squads, and we're not. Now, the next tie he's got is in Zagreb. He'll almost get a free pass because he's away from home. It will then come to Portugal coming to Hampden. And I think one of the things the performance last night will do is it will raise the expectation levels at Hampden, because the feeling will be, well, we went toe-to-toe for a period of time in Lisbon. Why can we not put in an even better performance at home with a Tartan Army rolling us on? Then I think you take it for there. Because for me personally, I would rather be ripped off the plaster now while he's still got some favourability about him than wait until it gets to the point of no return. And then, as I say, if we go this Nations League group and we lose the rest of these 4 games, apathy will creep in and it'll start becoming anger towards Steve Clarke rather than people just going, maybe it is or isn't time. So I'd rather you do it now where he's still in relatively good graces with the fans, and rather than wait till that relationship deteriorates to a point of no return.
You were going to jump in there, Tom?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's quite funny because you just looking at, we're obviously going to talk about England, but you obviously look at England and the group England have got, and Carsley coming in, and we're playing teams who are much lower than us in the world rankings, and Carsley's come in and he's going to have a nice little kind of introduction to international football management, isn't he? Where I don't know. I think the point I was trying to make beforehand with Clarke is that what you said, Rob, that he's this climb that he's achieved, with Scotland. I know it does seem to have reached a bit of a ceiling, doesn't it? But I think the point I was trying to make in terms of this Nations League and him getting you into it to the top, one of the top groups, against the top teams, is does he almost deserve to kind of oversee you in this because of what he's done, because of where he's got you to? And Connor, you were saying you did compete with Poland. We were better than Poland. On another night you could have easily beat Poland, and I know you didn't. I know you lost that game.
But then that's the concern for me, because what he's started to do now is where teams find ways to win. Steve Clarke is now actively finding ways for us to lose games that we shouldn't be losing. He's found a way to lose to Northern Ireland. He's found a way to lose to a poor performance with Poland by two stupid individual mistakes that he won't call out either, because that's the other thing. What I'm hearing from him is just absolutely, well, to be blunt, is boiling my piss, because he's sitting there saying, "I don't worry about results, don't care about results. This is just just need to get used to this evolution that we're in." What are you talking about? After this Nations League, you're straight into a World Cup qualifying campaign. You can't go into the back of that without winning any games, because you've got zero momentum behind you. It won't be an easy draw we'll get. Never is. There's going to be at least two teams in there that will be very, very difficult. One of them will more than likely be on a par with Portugal. Christ, it could even be Portugal. So, for me, that's my concern. If his attitude just now is, I don't care about results until the qualifying starts, then I don't like that.
Let me just ask you both one question. Just sorry to interrupt, Rob. Would you have preferred then, obviously using hindsight, would you have preferred to have stayed in the what are the tiers called? Like just tier A, tier B,
pot 2,
pot A, pot 1. Would you think it would have been better suited for Scotland to have stayed in pot 2 and playing those level of teams? Similar to the group England have got: Finland, Greece, Ireland. Would you have preferred to have stayed in a pot like that, where you obviously had teams kind of, I think probably lower than Scotland in the pecking order currently, play those teams and then go into the World Cup qualifier off the back of playing those teams, or go up into pot 1 and obviously test yourself and see how you get on against stronger opposition?
I'm happy to test ourselves. Of course, I'm happy to test ourselves. I'm happy to be in Group A, but it's almost a touch of the sort of Southgate syndrome. Beat all the teams below you that you can beat, and then perform poorly and don't get results against teams that are either on par with you or better than you. Now, I get it. Some of them, I'm not saying you should have won all these games. Clearly, France are a different animal. You're never going to go to Paris and beat them. You're just not. Even England at that time were performing well, were in good form, were bang up for it going into that game. And on that day, they performed. We didn't. I get that. And that's all fine, whatever. But you've got to find ways to be competitive. There's a reason we've got that, as I said earlier, that proud history of being good, solid team against these bigger sides. We've never been I think if you look through at least the last maybe 20 years since the Bertie Vogts year, since Walter Smith came in, I think if you ask a lot of the managers of some of these sides, I don't think we're a team that at various stages that they'd have looked at and went, I absolutely give Scotland, we fancy a trip there, because they would know we're going to be in for a game here, lads. This is going to be a tough game. Even if they end up winning it in the end, like I say, they would know they were going to be in for a match. Now, if I'm a manager at one of these sides, I'm licking my lips at the prospect of playing Scotland, because we cannot defend to save our lives.
I think just final word then on Scotland. I'll answer your question. Steve Clarke is ultimately going to be the victim of his own success, because he's raised the expectation. As Connor said there about we should be competing against Poland and we should be doing this, that, and the other. And he's right. He is right. But at the same time, before Steve Clarke came in, that wasn't the case. You were just hoping more than expectations. I think that's changed slightly. To answer your question about being in that group, no, you don't. You want to be in the top pot, but you want to be making a better fist of it. I think if we'd gone to the Euros and got some results, this wouldn't feel so bad. But it's just because we're on such a bad run now, and as you know yourself, a bad run can be manipulated into suiting an argument. So look, I don't think the SFA will sack Steve Clarke. I really don't. I think he'll get the World Cup campaign. Do I think he should? I think it's debatable at the minute. The nation seems split. Some say he's the right man for the job. Some say he's not. Davy Moyes is the only name I'm hearing. There's no other names because you've got to think, if you want to make that step up, it needs to be a different calibre of manager, and who's going to take the national job. Add to that as well.
David Moyes is a different calibre of manager to Steve Clarke, though.
I agree with you, but I'm saying there's not many.
If they want to get a David Moyes, it's now or never, because the time the World Cup campaign goes, he'll be in a new job, no doubt about it, and then they'll be left with a decision to make. Who are you going for? Is it, who's going to be Derek McInnes? All due respect to Derek McInnes, for me, that would just be Steve Clarke 2.0, in my opinion, because they're roughly the same level in what they've done. And take nothing away, McInnes is a fabulous manager domestically, done well with Kelly, but that step up, and that's why sometimes, and I'll be very quick in finishing this, I just think the SFA lack that ruthlessness at times to go, do you know what? Actually, the man out there we need to bring in is there now. Let's just go and do it. Thanks very much, Steve. Move on. Because he'll get another job. You're not telling me Steve Clarke takes Scotland to 2 tournaments and doesn't get a job when he leaves Scotland? Of course he would.
Does yes or no, just a simple yes or no, does Moyes take the Scotland job?
I reckon he would, yeah.
You think he would?
Yeah.
Have you heard anything he said during the Euros when he was doing punditry in Scotland? Absolutely, he takes the Scotland job if he's offered it.
Okay, well, we will park it there because we've done 30 odd minutes on that, and I've probably done another 30 more the way it was going. Okay, listen, England are playing tomorrow night. It's obviously the last hurrah, and then we're back to the proper stuff at the weekend. I say the proper stuff. We enjoy the international sport, which is really kind to us this time round. So it's Finland that have come, but they were absolutely pumped, and is it Piraeus in Greece 3-0? They lost. Should be a relatively routine night, you'd imagine, Tom. The big story, albeit, is Harry Kane, 100th cap. He joins quite an illustrious group. I was just sort of reading there before I came to your point. Peter Shilton leads the way. Then you've got Rooney, Beckham, Gerrard, Bobby Moore, Ashley Cole, who's obviously involved, Bobby Charlton, Frank Lampard, and a man that you'll probably know well from the history books is Billy Wright. I believe he was a bit of a Wolves legend, wasn't he? Is that right?
Yeah, Wolves legend, yeah.
And then you've got obviously Harry Kane on 99, but it'll be 100 not out, should I say, tomorrow night. Look, you've said your piece on Harry Kane over the last 6, 8, 10 weeks. However, in terms of his whole sort of England career, can you just try and encapsulate that a little bit for us and what might be, the way to move this on?
Yeah, I've been a big fan of Harry Kane. Honestly, I think he's been a fantastic servant for England, and yeah, he's obviously going to get his 100th cap tomorrow. He's going to, he's been England captain for a while now. His goal record, I think it's going to be, it's not going to be long. I'm off the top of my head, I can't remember where he sits, but I know it's not going to be long before he gets the England goal record as well. So he's had, an illustrious career for England at an international level, and like I said, a big fan of it. It's like I think the thing is I think it's starting to show that he's just starting to tail off a bit, Harry Kane. I think it was clearly evident at the Euros just gone, and a game against Ireland. I didn't think he was very effective in the game against Ireland. He was trying. He was doing all these kind of coming deep again and trying to get involved in the middle of the park. And I don't know what you put that down to. Whether it's him going across to Germany, changing style, and coming up against lesser opposition or just getting a bit older? I don't know, but I definitely think he's starting to tail off a bit, and it's something that, you know, Carsley or whoever ends up getting the England job, I think needs to be thinking about. Obviously, we don't know if they're thinking about it, but just from, you know, the game time Kane gets still, and just the lack of chance any other English strikers get, it just seems to be that they aren't thinking about it and that they don't perceive it to be a problem, which, I do think it's not a massive concern. You know, the guy's still obviously popping up with goals and he's still having an influence, but I do think it's something that's going to just become more and more of an issue, you know, as the months pass and the international games pass.
Just while you were talking there, he is England's top goal scorer, 66 goals in 97 appearances. Well, obviously that'll be 99, 100 tomorrow. But he took the mantle from Wayne Rooney, who obviously surpassed Bobby Charlton as well. So he is the main man when it comes to leading goal scorers. Connor, I'll come to you on Harry Kane, because I think it's a pertinent point that Tom makes. You know, you've mentioned there about Scotland and challenging towards the North American World Cup. You know, I think, can England really afford to go into that tournament with Harry Kane as the main man?
Well, currently, in the current vein of form he's in an England shot, I think it's up for debate, certainly. I think there's seemingly no real issue for him at Bayern. You know, he's got 37 goals and 34 appearances for Bayern Munich, so he's been doing the business there. But he's got an awful lot more in terms of the runners there, and I think when you look at his positional play, that's where you feel like he's off, because Harry Kane, he's best when he was absolutely, you know, flying for England and flying for Spurs. He was always front and centre. He was always in the face of the defenders. He was always brash and he was up there. And right now, some of the positions he's taken up in the park, you're questioning. You look at the goal that England got, the first goal, when Trent Alexander-Arnold whips that delicious ball through the middle. And it's Anthony Gordon, the winger, who's made the run centrally that your striker should be making. Harry Kane, when that ball was played, by the way, is in effect out on the right wing for some unknown reason to me, because that's not his position. And that's the kind of thing where I go, Harry Kane 3-4 years ago, and his pomp at Spurs was on the end of that pass. He was the one through the middle for that pass and finishing it off. For some reason, he wasn't there. And it's carried on, as Tom says, it's carried on for the Euros, because Euros was the same. You know, he didn't really sparkle as he should have done at the Euros, and I think part of that was his position. Now, yes, he still got a couple of goals. I know he was still in contention to get the golden boot at the Euros, which is just, you know, fair enough. Although I would just caveat by saying that one of his goals comes from a penalty that never should have been, and the other one I don't think he knew anything about when it went in. But you can't take it away from him. So yeah, listen, I feel for whoever's going to be leading England into that tournament in 2 years' time. I really do, because if you think the pressure's bad on England at the best of times in these tournaments, just imagine the type of pressure on them walking into a World Cup on the 60th anniversary of your greatest ever achievement by winning it. And I'm not even being funny when I say that. That's the level of pressure that will be on these boys, because that's the way the media works down there. They will not let that go by without reminding them time and again. So, yeah, I feel for them, but I do have my concerns whether or not Harry Kane should be leading the line going into that.
Tom, you know, we mentioned Harry Kane. It'll be a gold cap he'll receive tomorrow for his 100th. There was a really nice piece on the England website today. I don't know if you saw it. It was Ashley Cole giving Gibbs White and Angel Gomez their first caps. You know, he was actually really complimentary to Angel Gomez in that, saying, you know, his rise to this stage has been unique. The fact that he's not playing in England as well, he said, has kind of gone under the radar. Lee Carsley is actually, I don't want to use stern language, but he's kind of made a rod for his own back here, because
Yeah, it ties into what we're talking about with Scotland. I just think now these they will, but they must be, and this ties into the bigger conversation about the England boss and confirming who it's going to be, because for me it starts like these games. It starts now, doesn't it? It starts now for your preparation for the qualifiers and trying to get in the World Cup. And again, this is why I'm kind of dumbfounded still as to the situation with the England permanent boss as to why they're not trying to come to make a decision sooner, because every game, I know it sounds a bit cheesy, sounds a bit cliche, every game is important. And I'll be honest with you, this is going to sound a little bit, I don't know, maybe a little bit harsh. And again, you can shoot me down if you think I'm wrong, but I just think that the call-ups from Carsley for Gibbs-White and Gomez, I think Livramento, just because we're so short on left-back options, is a valid call-up. But I'll be honest with you, I think the call-ups for Gomez and Gibbs-White are just token call-ups. I honestly do. There's no way these guys are going to be, there's no way they're going to be regulars with the guys that they've got in front of them. And I believe you can pick probably 2 or 3 more players, that from behind those starters that are better than Gibbs-White and Gomez. Look, I'm happy for the guys to get called up, get their first caps, be involved. I really am. But seriously, what are the chances of these guys becoming regular England starters with the guys that they've got in front of them? I just can't see it. So that begs the question: why are you bringing them up? Why are you giving them a chance? You could argue with Gibbs-White. He's got what is he about? I'm not going to start asking you to look at players' ages again, Rob. I know you're getting fed
I was getting that last night in the space as well, wasn't I, Connor?
Yeah, I know. That's what I was saying. I knew you were checking ages on Wikipedia last night as well. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, because you look at the age of Foden, you look at the age of Palmer, you look at the age.
24.
These guys are all still really young themselves. So I just think it's a bit bizarre. I know Palmer and Foden and some of these guys are out at the minute, and that's why I just think it is a bit of a kind of a token call-up from Carsley, bringing these guys in and giving them a cap and just giving them a go, seeing what they could do. But then I kind of flip back to what I said at the start. My take is you should be concentrating now on the qualifiers, the World Cups. All right, so if Palmer and Foden aren't fit and available, you should be playing the guys who are second best to them. And in my opinion, the likes of Eze, the likes of Bowen, these kind of guys are ahead of the pecking order than Morgan, Gibbs-White and Gomez are. So, yeah, I find it a little bit odd, to be honest with you. I really do.
Connor, is that something you'd go along with, the sense that, Lee Carsley's obviously brought these guys in, he knows these guys from the 21s, but whether he's going to stick with that, or is it a case that he just goes back to the tried and trusted, or does he run with it for the Nations League because he thinks, well, actually, he knows maybe deep down that come the World Cup qualifiers, there is going to be another man leading the charge?
Well, I mean, possibly, but then I would just say, and a question for Tom, actually, I was just thinking there whilst he was speaking, this gamble that England are taking by waiting to appoint the permanent manager, surely do they not have to try and put him in post before the Nations League ends to give him a couple of, not easy games, but easier games to sink his teeth in? Because if you think about it and you go into the World Cup qualifiers, right, there's I know England will be in the sort of the top pot, so it does mitigate some of the harder teams that they could get, but from my reading, they could still get, 1 or 2 tricky games. And I'm just thinking, for example, if they go into that pot and say they get, I don't know, Hungary, for talking sake, who are a half-decent side, have caused England problems before. Would it be fair for a new manager to come in their first game as the opener of a World Cup qualification against a potentially difficult opponent? That, to me, would be putting your manager behind the 8 ball straight away, even if he should probably still beat them. So that's where I think if they can, give him a couple, whoever you're going to appoint, give him a couple of games before that qualification starts rather than putting him straight under pressure.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, because what's kind of thrown a bit of a spanner in the works, in my opinion, is the fact that Foden, Palmer, Watkins as well, I think is an important one, because we're talking about Kane. I think at this moment in time, the only person that could potentially come in and start playing regularly, up top for England in place of Kane is Ollie Watkins, due to how well he's been performing in the Premier League. The fact that those 3 guys aren't in the squad, like I said, it's thrown a bit of a spanner in the works. And I've got a feeling as well that that's led to some of these guys being called up, this kind of, like I said, a bit of a token call up. Look, I might be wrong. I said to you, I'm 90% certain that Carsley's going to get offered the job. And if that's the case, then maybe he is eyeing these guys who he, like Rob said, knows so well from the under-21s, who have performed well for him, have been reliable for him. Maybe he's looking at them to incorporate them, and he's got, big plans for them, in the future. But I just think in terms of those players, the quality that they possess now, and the other players that England have available to them, I just think there's much better players that are ahead of him of similar age. So yeah, it's just a bit odd.
Listen, if we go back 3 months, we were sat here purring over Adam Wharton, absolutely purring over him, and he's nowhere. I can't believe that.
I look, mate. Last pod we did, I was going to mention him. I completely forgot, because I same thing. I thought, where the hell is he? He got called up to the under-21s. So Carsley didn't call him up to the senior. He got called up to the under-21s, and then he picked up a knock or something, and he ended up back at Palace. But he was back in the under-21s, and yeah, that was a surprise for me.
We were sat here during games saying, get him on. He's the man that can change it. He's the man that can do something.
Well, it's just as well. Talk about guys getting called up and having a chance. When those games he played in, those friendly matches before the Euros, he caught the eye. He tried to dictate play, and even though he didn't have much time on the pitch, I thought he did incredibly well. And
he was positive in his play every time.
Positive, and he's something that I feel England have lacked for a while now in midfield, is that ball player. Just that kind of classy midfielder who likes to get on the ball as much as possible, has a good range of passing. Someone to play alongside Declan Rice, because he's kind of like your all-action midfielder, isn't he? He's defensive, he gets stuck in, but he likes to drive forward as well, and he can pop up with a few goals. But we've lacked that guy alongside him who just kind of likes to sit. The kind of Pirlo role it's called, isn't it? The guy likes to sit and dictate play and try and get on the ball and make the passes through the lines. And yeah, I don't know enough about this Gomez to really kind of comment on him. I have to see him a bit more before I can kind of give an opinion on him. I've not seen him at all in France.
Fun fact for you on Gomez, his godfather. Do you know who his godfather is? His actual godfather?
No.
Nani, the Man United winger.
Is it?
I think Gomez he's got a Portuguese tendency in his family. Nani is his godfather.
Yeah. But you're right, mate. That was a surprise for me. And I know Crystal Palace haven't had the best of starts, but yeah, again, I don't want to sound too cheesy, but he looked like a future England star, someone who's going to just feature more and more as the seasons went by. But yeah, to see him being demoted back into the under-21s was a surprise. And yeah, it's not really been picked up on, not really been discussed, has it? But
I was shouting sites this afternoon on my lunch prepping for this show, thinking, is he injured? Has he been playing? And he's not injured, but as you say, he's obviously picked up a knock for the 21s and gone back. Connor, it must be nice to be able to turn your nose up at a player of Adam Watkins' quality? You are on mute. It's not coming off, is it? What's he got there? Has he got a magic wand or something? What is he going to try? You are still on mute, mate.
What were you going to say? He's struggling.
You're on mute. You'll need to come out maybe and come back in, but we'll get his opinion if he comes back on. But that was a bit strange that he couldn't unmute himself. He's still got the mute button on. He looks absolutely puzzled by that. No, as I say, it must be absolutely great.
Yeah.
But look, you're going to go through, you'd imagine, this Nations League, flawless. You'd have to say that, as you say, Carsley's got a really good run at it. I can't imagine, in fact, if he does slip up in any of the games, there'll be anarchy because you're expected to. So that probably adds a bit of pressure in itself. But it seems to be that he has picked the right people around him. Ashley Cole, as I say, came across really well in that piece. He seems quite close to the players, enough to be strict, but still be kind of sit in with the players as well. And I've always kind of liked Julian Lescott. I've kind of liked his mannerisms. So I think he's done well in his appointments. But listen to Carsley speak today. I still believe that he's doing a lot of learning. I still believe that he is not the finished article by any means. Is this England job a bridge too far for him? He's probably looking at himself in the mirror thinking, if I do get offered this, then it probably is. But it's not one that he could realistically turn down.
Oh no, there's absolutely no chance he's going to turn a job down if he gets offered it. And I agree with what you just said. I think it is a step too far for him at this moment in time. I don't think it's the kind of he's chipping in and out, man. I don't think he's we need to be aiming for a higher caliber of head coach, in my opinion. But yeah, the situation, it is what it is. You're right. I think the only pressure that he's got on him is that we are playing lesser opposition, so to speak. And if there's any kind of poor performances there or any points that are dropped, then he is going to get absolutely pelted, isn't he? But I personally would have liked to see us in a group such as yourselves, playing against likes of Portugal, Croatia, maybe not so much Poland, but Portugal and Croatia. Two teams, especially Portugal on their day, can really hurt you and have the potential to embarrass you. I would have liked to have seen what Carsley could do against opposition like that, because by all accounts, if he came in and we performed well in those games and we saw a kind of change in approach and a change to his to the style and he's added his own kind of put his own stamp on things and we've won those matches, I think people will then have to stand up and take note, won't they? But I just think, we play the likes of Ireland, Finland and Greece and we get wins. You don't truly know, do you, whether it's him.
All sense of security, isn't it?
Yeah, whether it's his impact, And look, there was some positives from the Ireland game. I thought in the first half especially, we were a bit more proactive, looking to pass the ball forward quicker, which was great to see. But then I felt the second half was a pretty much, it was a Gareth Southgate performance from the Euros. I don't think we performed very well in that second half. So I just think it's going to be difficult to gauge whether Carsley's had an impact because of the opposition that we're coming up against. That's my opinion anyway.
Connor, we've got you back there. We had you in about 8 devices on there, but you're back. The point I was making was, they've got an absolute embarrassment of riches. So much so that, we're keen on Harvey Barnes, but, as I said to you, it must be really nice to have a player Adam Watkins quality. You can just say no thank you at this point in time.
Well, please God that you can actually hear me now.
We can hear you, mate. Yeah, we can.
Don't know what happened there. Genuinely on my side it said I was off mute, so I don't know. But of course it is. But that's the wealth of talent England possess. And when you can kind of just chuck players of that quality to the side without batting an eyelid and without it really weakening your team, it's got to be a nice feeling. obviously, as you say, that's why we are sort of hoping we can sort of convince Harvey Barnes to make the divergence up north and come and don the navy blue. And to be fair, I think, as I said before, if he wants international football, that's what you'll have to do. But that's the thing, they're not lacking in options in England, and that's why, it seems crazy to me that you can have certain players maybe not playing so well just now, but always getting, playing and starting every game, because England don't have to do that. They've got the quality to come in and take on that mantle, no problem, I think. And yeah, they're in a good place in terms of the squad and then the depth that they can pick and choose for. That's for sure. And I mean, yeah, that's the lovely thing about having a pool of about 64 million people to choose from down there, as opposed to us. But listen, that's the nature of the beast, and that's why they will go into the World Cup, just as they do any tournament, as one of the favourites to win it.
Tom, you were going to come back in there. Final say to you there in England?
No, I was just sometimes this, like you said, it's you have to kind of feel like you have to rein it in sometimes, an England fan, because, like you said, it's the pot of players that we have available to us is ridiculous sometimes when you step back and have a look at it. And we're obviously talking about Scotland at the start of it, and I personally feel from your two games that you are really just lacking like two or three, like, kind of John McGinn, Scott McTominay quality players to come in to really turn you into a
not even world class, just top class.
Yeah, top class. And like Harvey Barnes would be 100%. And if you could get maybe someone of that caliber in defence somewhere, I think all of a sudden it would make such a difference to your team. And this is where sometimes as an England fan, and I know it's all relative to your situation, and all the rest of it. But then, there does need to be a bit of what's the word? Kind of, you need to stay a bit grounded sometimes. You know what I mean? In terms of your position, you can't. You got to be careful of going off on one when you look at the situation and the players that we possess, and how well we have done in tournaments. So I think you always have to kind of take things with a little bit of a pinch of salt. But no, it'll be interesting to see Finland again. I think we've got to be looking to win this 3-4, 5-0. I honestly do. I think anything less, another 2-0 win, I don't think it will be a big enough result for Carsley and his attempt.
They've just lost 3 in Greece.
Yeah, 100%, mate. At Wembley as well, in front of the home fans. It's got to be a thrashing. Finland will obviously come and try to make things difficult, sit men behind the ball, but. I thought it was a bit of a missed opportunity against Ireland. I thought the second half we did really well, did everything right. But then in second half, I think we took our foot off the gas, got complacent. When I don't see the reason why you should just be going for the jugular. You should just try to score as many goals as possible, aren't you? And try and impress, especially when there's a new guy sat in the dugout, calling the shots. So we'll see. But
Okay. What I will say is, if he doesn't, win convincingly, if things do start going on, these little quirks, that he wears a tracksuit and he puts the cones out, there's soon thumbnails on him if he's not doing the business. So, as Connor says, that the media can be ruthless in England. Oh, listen, it's something we want to talk about. We wanted to talk about it a couple of weeks ago, and we'll finish up on it. We'll be on here till 11:30, but we'll give it another 5-10 minutes. Just on, it's a point that Connor made in the chat a couple of weeks ago, the EFL Cup. The European sides from the Premier League have been seeded in the draws, which we'll go twofold on it. I'll come to you, Connor, on the Premier League team side, and your thoughts on why you think this is maybe a pro or a con to the tournament itself.
Yeah, I think it's a massive con because what it does is it enables these big teams. So it's actually a couple of things, right? Firstly, the way they seed them means that those teams in the Champions League and the Europa League and the Conference League, obviously Chelsea as well, are in a position whereby they cannot be drawn against each other because of the way because the new formats of the European competitions means there's more games. It also means that those games spread out over the course of the 2 weeks. So the justification has been that basically they could, to fit the games in, they had to keep them apart. But they've also done this weird part of it, which I really don't like, which is before they done the draw, they done a separate draw to determine whether these teams were going to be home or away in the draws that they had, which had, personally, why does that matter? Why does that? Why do you have to do a separate draw to say, right, these teams are home, these are away, and 4 of them, by the way, 4 of them out of the 6 have got home ties. And what it's enabled them to do is guaranteeing them an easier game in their first cup game. It's also meaning in that game they'll have luxuries to rest certain players. So, for example, one of the games, Chelsea are at home to Barrow. I mean, they can play their C team in that game. Which means not only then are they getting the advantage of easier ties, not only then are they being looked after more, but when it comes to whatever team they play in the Premier League at the weekend, they'll have the advantage that they'll have been able to rest players for that game. And it's, to me, that isn't a fair way of doing this competition. This is just a purely knockout competition. Why is it fair that all the big boys get to miss each other out completely and, in effect, get buys into the next round? I will say, I'll slightly exempt Liverpool just by the nature of the fact they got West Ham in their draw, albeit it's at Anfield, so they should still win that. But it just feels like an unfair thing. And it means as well, teams, I know obviously the Baggies sadly went out, but teams who are in the Championship, a League One or a League Two side, they're already going to be bang up against it, and then they're going to know they're going to get an away tie at a Chelsea or a City or a United, and it's a bit like it should be a fair playing field for everybody. Nobody should get special treatment in a cup draw. It should just be that luck of the draw, and it's criminal to me, especially with 4 of the 6 getting home ties. You're guaranteeing that they'll go through. One of them will win the cup purely because the draw massively favours them and gives them an advantage.
Tom, with your EFL hat on, is there an argument that, you know, it is the sort of the romance of the cup and that, you know, Barrow are getting to go to Stamford Bridge? You know, they will get a larger share of the, you know, the gate money on the day, and they may have the opportunity to get a scalp. Is there that element to it, or are you very much with Connor in the sense that no, it's rigged almost to a degree? Yeah. It's built for the bigger sides.
100%, mate. I think it's absolutely disgusting and sickening. I can't believe that it's not being discussed and debated and challenged more than it has been. There was a bit of talk about it, a little bit of talk afterwards, wasn't there? A little bit of kind of debate backwards and forwards. You know, I saw a bit of a debate on TalkSport about it, but then it all just seems to have been kind of brushed under the carpet and kind of accepted. And I just think it's absolutely disgusting. But I think, unfortunately, it's just reflective of what's happening to football in England at this moment in time.
Look, if I got my phone out now and I called the Barrow chairman and I says to him, who would you rather be? Would you rather be at Stamford Bridge away or at Fleetwood Town away? What's he going to say to me?
Yeah, but that's not the reason they're doing it. They're not doing it. The decision hasn't been made to try and give the teams like Barrow a juicier tie in the competition. That's not why the decision's been made. The decision has been made to support and help out the top teams. They haven't been involved in any of the decision making. The decision has been purely to help aid the top teams with the so-called, they're playing too many games and the fatigue and all this blooming, moaning and groaning that's been going on for some time now. It just follows what happened last season again, which was absolutely disgusting decision to scrap replays in the FA Cup. That all came from the top teams playing in European competitions going, oh, we're playing too many games. Our players are getting too tired. It's they can't keep this up, so we need you to scrap FA Cup replays. I bet you if you went and asked Barrow about that decision, they'd be absolutely raging about it because, those FA Cup replays have kept some teams, similar ilk to Barrow, alive, because they've managed to get a juicy draw and get a replay off the back of it. It's brought in shed loads of money for them and kept them afloat. So, that decision was disgusting, and this just follows that up. It's absolutely appalling. I didn't even realise it had happened until the draw was made and I found out about it. I was like, what the hell's this? This is absolutely insane. Do you know what makes it even more insane? Is that I think it's something like 8 seasons now. It was either 6 or 8 seasons. A team outside the top 6 hasn't won the competition. So, what message does that send? There hasn't been a top 6 winner for about 6, 7 seasons. So I know what we'll do. We'll make it even easier for them. We'll basically make them avoid each other in the first round that they come in. Because that was one thing. Obviously, it happened a few seasons ago now and quite a while back. But they were then given a round, weren't they? They were given a free the first round, or is it the 2 rounds now they don't get involved in? So they, those top teams are now brought in the 3rd round. But not only that, now we're saying you're not going to play. None of you are going to play each other. So you're all going to avoid one another. So what's going to happen is you've all got a better chance of getting through to those later rounds. Honestly, it's criminal. Connor said it. It's absolutely criminal, and I cannot believe it's not being discussed and debated more than it actually is. But it does surprise me. It doesn't. It does because of but it doesn't because of the power that these teams have, and these decisions that are being made. It doesn't surprise me in that sense. It doesn't because they're just in it for themselves, and the league, the FA, and the Premier League. They're kind of. They're the masters. They call the shots and they do what needs to be done for them. So, yeah, as you can tell, mate, I'm absolutely raging about it. And to tell you what, I'm a West Brom fan. We've done absolutely nothing in that competition for years now because we're one of these teams now that tend to play, second string to try and get them fit, get them some game time. So we don't take it, and that's one thing that annoys me personally as a West Brom fan. We don't take it seriously enough, but I do feel sorry for those teams that do take it seriously, and I'm including your kind of bottom half Premier League teams in there. Who, that's the competition. Any team that sits outside the top 6, that's their best opportunity at winning some silverware, isn't it? And some of those teams do take it very seriously, but. It's just been made even harder for them. Well, let alone your teams in League 2, League 1, and your Championship. It's been made harder now for your Bournemouths and your Crystal Palaces and your Aston Villas to try and win that cup. It's
that's the thing, though. This is an important thing as well, right? I know what you're saying about glamour ties, Robert, for smaller clubs, right? But you can get that anyway in a fair draw. The issue becomes that you are absolutely bending over backwards to make it as easy for these big clubs as possible. Also, from a perspective of a Newcastle fan, listen, I'll be first to say, last season's League Cup, we got that bye into the 3rd round because we were in the Champions League. Now, I didn't agree with that then. I still felt, why should you get a bye by virtue of because you finished here? Don't get me wrong, it happens the same in Scotland as well. The top 6 in the SPFL don't compete in the group stage format, the League Cup, and go straight into the last 16, which means you only need to win 3 games to win that tournament or to get to the final. But from a Newcastle's perspective, there's also that little bit of, well, I tell you what, there's a tie being thrown up, Arsenal against City. You sit there as a Newcastle fan or a Palace fan, or even one of the teams at the top end of the Championship who might think they can cause an upset, and you go, I tell you what, one of the big boys is going to go out here. Bonus, that might give us a better chance, just slightly, to go and win it. And when you take that opportunity out of it and you guarantee, because let's be honest, looking at the ties they've all got, they're all going to get through. There's only, as I say, Liverpool get West Ham, Spurs are away to Coventry. I will say that could be a banana skin, but they should still get through.
What's their... Oh, sorry, mate, to interrupt, but I was going to say, what is their reasoning? Because they've obviously not come out and said, well, we've done this to make it easier for the top 16.
Because Well, because basically what's been happening is, and this is where the media are an absolute disgrace, particularly TalkSport and Simon Jordan in this issue, because his attitude is, well, like it or just cancel the whole tournament, And this has been going on for a few years now. The big guns haven't really bothered their backsides about the League Cup until it's got to, like the semi-final stages and stuff where they might get the trophy and they've played B teams or whatever, which they're entitled to do. But because of the fixture congestion and then they took away the replays, it's all been driven by that sort of top six saying, in effect, if you don't do what we want you to do, we'll withdraw for the cup. And if we're not in the cup, you don't have a cup because then commercially it's not as attractive. And that's wrong.
100%. It's just, that's what I'm saying. It's just completely corrupt in that everything you've said there is spot on. They haven't even tried to come out and sugarcoat it with some BS about as to why they've made this decision. They've just made this decision. There's just no reasoning. There's no logic behind it than to like you said, just keep the biggest teams, just to keep the biggest teams in the competition. Because like you said, financially, it's more, it's more viable for the cup, the sponsor, the ratings, the people tuning in. That is the only reason I made that decision, which is, if you just step back and think about that, regardless of who you support, that's just wrong on every level. It's just so wrong. These teams have got the advantage already. They're the richest clubs in the world. They've got the best players available to them. They've got the biggest squads available to them. They've got every advantage going for them already than every other team in that competition. Yet they've now gone and decided to give them, another advantage. We've let them out. We've let them off the first two ties, and we're only bringing them in on the third. But now we're going to give them another advantage. Honestly, I'm lost for words. I cannot. I can't believe there's
competition. That's what it should be about. And
Connor, is it the case with just world football as a whole at the moment? I mean, you look at the reshuffle of the European competitions and how that's been sort of dressed up. But is that just another case of fluffing the feathers of the already, big clubs?
Of course it is. And the problem is there's nobody calling them out apart from people like us on podcasts like this, because the mainstream media are all in line, and then I talk to them as well, and we'll just toe the party line. And even when you think you've got certain people who might call it out, occasionally have a dig with these types of issues, they just fall in line with everybody else. Look at the Super League, right? One of the things that bothered me about that was how much credit the media and the likes of TalkSport in particular tried to take for stopping the Super League, when the reality was it was fans that stopped that, because when the news had broke that these teams were basically going to abscond and disappear doing their own thing to make more money as if they needed it, a lot of fans went, nah, no having that. Fans of those clubs were protesting outside their grounds. You saw the Chelsea fans protesting outside Stamford Bridge. There was Man United fans, Liverpool fans as well, because they recognise that it takes away what football's supposed to be. Yes, everybody knows the genie's out the bottle. Financially, football is never going to go back to the 70s or 80s when it was all about playing for the jersey and getting 90 quid a week. That's all changed now. But there's still something to be said for the spirit of the game and the competition of the game, and not thinking that you can big boy teams. I mean, listen, one of the laughing stocks of that whole thing was that Spurs were going to go. I mean, Spurs, are you kidding me on? This is the level of ridiculousness it gets to. And when it isn't called out, they rule the roost and just do whatever they damn well please. And even the authorities, I'm sorry, but Richard Masters, who runs the Premier League, and the guys who run the EFL, they are weak. They don't have backbones to their names. They will make life misery for the small clubs, but do nothing to the big clubs. Look what they've done to Everton and to Forest now. Admittedly, they broke rules, but Everton and Forest cooperated with investigations and got punished. Man City have obstructed them at every twist and turn and have been allowed to go and pile on winning trophy after trophy for 4 years, and they're only just getting round to sorting these charges out because they're scared to rock the boat with the big teams. It's the same reason nobody can break in. So this is just another example of the other teams. I mean, how many teams is there, Tom, between the EFL and the Premier League? Is it 60 odds?
72.
52.
72, right? So they're prioritising 6 teams and telling the other 66 that they don't matter. That cannot continue. It's totally wrong. It goes against what fans want. You spoke about earlier, Garnetize. What about the magic of the cup? What about the magic of, for example, a Bradford? When they got through to that final a few years back.
When Wigan won the FA Cup, and when Portsmouth, they had that mad FA Cup, when Portsmouth and Cardiff were in the final, and Barnsley were in the semi-final, and
just bigger picture here, and I think this is pertinent because I do feel this is quite a vibe when I speak to fans of EFL clubs. There's this, everyone's chasing the dream of the Premier League, okay? Every fan wants to get there, but see, when they do get there, they do then miss the EFL. And talk to me about that. Tell me about that.
100% spot on. This is the thing as well. This is becoming more. As a West Brom fan, obviously been in the Championship for some years now, but obviously speaking to Championship fans, doing this pod, speaking to the Championship fans I've already spoken to from different clubs. Look, we probably shouldn't have started this chat at the end of this pod, mate, because we could probably have another, hour and a half pod about all this. We could go on and talk about this. But there's a genuine, it's bubbling up slowly. And this is just this is more fuel to the fire. What's happened with this League Cup, the decision they've made here is that I just think fans are just getting sick to death of the top 6 clubs. And when I mean top 6, in terms of how rich they are, because there's clubs that have broke into there of late. But the traditional top 6, so to speak, they're just getting sick of how everything is orientated around them. Other teams in the Premier League are getting sick of it. The rest of the division, and like you said, teams in the Championship, more and more fans I speak to. The only benefit they see of your team getting promoted is they know it'll just financially help your club. It's going to financially make you stable, and it's going to help you make your club because you still get your parachute payments if you come back down. But in terms of the will of the fans wanting to go into the Premier League, they just dread it. They just absolutely dread it. Vast majority of West Brom fans I speak to are exactly the same, and Leeds fans and Norwich fans, these kind of teams who've been in the Prem not too long ago, been in the Championship, been in around the promotion hunt, the playoffs. They're having much more enjoyable seasons. Right? They've missed out on promotion. It's been a bit heartbreaking, but as soon as the season gets up and running again, and you're winning more games than you're losing in a division where everyone can beat everyone, even the top teams and the teams at the bottom, they can all beat one another. That's what football should be, and that's what the people, like Connor said, the people running the Premier League. That's what they should be trying to achieve. They should be trying to level the playing field so it's a more competitive division where more teams are able to beat one another and there isn't such a gulf between the top and the bottom. But every decision that they seem to make does the opposite to that. It makes that gulf bigger, and it seems to benefit those clubs even more so. And it's just, I feel something will happen. I do feel something will happen.
What do you mean something will happen?
I just don't think it can continue like it is. I think something will happen. I think that Super League conversation will come round again at some point soon. I don't think it's close, but I do think that conversation will happen again at some point in the future, because it's just they're just put on this pedestal. They're just put on this pedestal. They're not even trying to hide it. This is the thing now. There was like that decision has been made with the League Cup. They're not even trying to hide it now that they put those teams up there on that pedestal and they're treated differently to everyone else. So I just think the unrest from everyone else in the division and all the other teams, that make up the football pyramid, I just think it's going to continue to grow. And I just hope something is done, and like Connor says, the only way it will be done is if there's a reaction. Like it needs. what's happening now with these decisions being made needs a reaction that was like when they were talking about the Super League and leaving, the football pyramid. Fans have got to kind of react like they did there to these decisions that are being made for them, to say that we're not happy. This can't go on.
Here's one for you, Rick. And I think we will come back actually and do a kind of debate pod on this because it's got you both going a wee bit. But here's one for you, right? Both clubs I'll put to separately. If the big six, as you say, so let's just say Liverpool, Man United, City, Arsenal, they say tomorrow we don't want to play in your League Cup anymore, and we're going to pull out. And the FA say that's fine. Would you guys still feel the prestige of wanting to go and win that trophy?
What? I mean, listen.
Does it matter if they're in it or not? Is the question? Because if you don't value the competition, then do you really want it?
Yeah, but it depends on what lens you look at it through. Because this is a conversation that's been on for a while. Other countries have done away with their third cups, which I think is a disgrace, because you're denying opportunities to clubs to go and win a competition, to go and be rubbing shoulders with the big teams, because it doesn't suit those teams to do it, even though they've got squad depths and money coming out the backside, that it actually isn't that big of a deal for them to play in it. But I think, commercially, if those teams pull out, it becomes slightly less attractive. That being said, what I think is a fair measuring stick, and I don't know if Tom will agree, but he might know a bit more about it. Look how seriously Sky take the EFL. They've just introduced this whole Sky Sports Plus thing, showing all the EFL game, which is incredible. It shows that there's a real market. The Sky wouldn't be doing things like that if there wasn't a market for it. And there would still be an appetite without those clubs in the cup. Would it feel as prestigious? Maybe. I mean, think about it, right? If West Brom won the cup, or Newcastle won the cup, and you got through all the rounds and you never played any of the top six to get there and win the cup, would you sit there and go, I don't really feel as good about that because we never played City or Man United? No, of course you wouldn't. You'd be absolutely thrilled that you'd won the cup. And I think that would still be the case. But I'm just sick fed up of these teams holding things over football like a sword of Damocles. Like, you'll do what we want or you won't have a cup.
Well, I think that's
unfair. Yeah. Unfair to the fans who love those cup competitions and who want their teams competing in them.
Spot on. And I think what you said, Rob, they know that. That's what they're thinking, is that, well, like you said, if we were to pull out of these things, the prestige there, it's not there because the top six, the big six teams aren't involved in it anymore. And I think initially, there would be a period of kind of transition, I guess. But then I don't think it would take very long for everyone else involved in the cup to think, you know what, that was the best decision, that made for those teams buggering off and just making this a real open competition where anyone now from the remaining teams in the Prem, the Championship, even a top League One team with how strong some of those teams are nowadays, could just put a real run together, ruffle some feathers, and win some silverware. You make a good point. I think you spot on.
To Rob McElhenney and the Deadpool fella who's Ryan Reynolds. Sorry, if you said to those two that Wrexham could go on and win the League Cup in 3-4 years and albeit not play Man United in the final, I think they'd bite your hand off.
100%. I think it's quite. I think it's
on the backside as well. The big teams, because I'll say very quickly, let's not forget how important the cups have been at some of these sides. Look at Man United. Eric Ten Hag is only in a job because of the cup competitions. There's no getting away from that. When he won the League Cup in his first season, that kept him in a job because he hadn't got the heights they were looking for, even though he'd managed to finish inside the top four. They had dropped off. And in last season in particular, they finished 8th. We finished above them for the first time ever. And if it wasn't for the FA Cup, it would be Newcastle, not Manchester United, who were playing in European football. So there is a value to them. And I think that they'll shoot themselves in the foot eventually in the long run by doing it.
Well, and it comes back to the point you made, Connor, which is a great point, in that this is why the league has to be braver, because they won't do it. They won't drop out of these tournaments. They won't do it. They might threaten to in order to get what they want, but They won't do it because of exactly what you've just said there. How important some of these cup wins have been to certain clubs over, the last few seasons. Man United, absolutely fantastic example. Those cup wins, he wouldn't be if it weren't for those cup wins, he wouldn't be in a job, and they wouldn't have been playing European football. And, some of those cup wins Liverpool have got, Klopp probably would have been under a hell of a lot more pressure than he was if he'd not won some of those League Cups when he'd won them. They wouldn't drop out of those tournaments. The fans wouldn't let them. That's the other thing as well. The vast majority of the fans wouldn't let them drop out of those tournaments.
But you can't.
So they've got to put their foot down. They've got to. Pardon?
You can't have cake and eat it. You can't say on one hand, we just pad this cup up so we can get a couple of home draws against Barrow and the like. But at the same time, we want to win these trophies still. We don't want to leave the
and this will be the last comment I make. And what makes a complete total mockery of all this moaning and groaning of these clubs, these top clubs, is last season going on and on about the fixture the fixture congestion, how many games they're playing, get rid of the replays in the FA Cup, and they've come up with this stupid thing now with the League Cup. As soon as the season's done, they go off on some blooming tour of blooming Australia or Hong Kong or America or South America.
Yeah.
As soon as the season's done, they're off and they're playing blooming 10 games over in these countries. Well, surely that just shows you how much of an absolute nonsense it is that they're talking absolute trash.
To me, it's like this, right? You have both got kids, right? Robert, you've got kids as well, right? It's like you having your kids there, right? And your oldest going, right, Dad, you're going to make me sirloin steak every night for dinner, and my younger siblings having fish finger sandwiches. And if you don't keep making me that sirloin steak, then I'm going to leave the house. You wouldn't put up with that, would you? You'd go, I'll tell you what, there's a fucking no. You know what I mean? You'll get what I put in front of you, and you'll do as you're told. And that's what the Premier League need to do. If you've got to treat Aye, and the FA as well, especially with the FA Cup's concerned. They've got to, because if you let the inmates run the asylum, then they'll just do what they want. And that's what's happened for too long. So, sometimes you just need to say, look, I tell you what, like it or lump it, this is how it's going to work. It's going to be like this for everybody, because it's the fair way of doing it. If you don't like it, off you pop. There's the door. As my boy used to tell me, if you don't like what's in front of you, then you're not getting anything. You'll starve. Fine. If these clubs want to do that and see their fans leave.
On that note of Connor offering us the door, I think we'll all take the door as it's approaching my bedtime, and we've done a good 90 minutes here, lads. So, listen, there's been a couple of people who've joined in and out that last half an hour as it got quite explosive at times. So, if you have enjoyed it, leave us a comment, leave us a like, leave us something that we can go on and try and build on. But certainly, I think there's a case for a wee debate show at some point in the near future, because I did enjoy that last half an hour there, certainly. I'll thank you, Tom. I'll thank you, Connor. And we will see you all on the other side. Cheers.